And joining me now on Skype to talk more about today's decision is Helen Alvare, professor of law at the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University. Helen, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Helen, I know that you've been following the Little Sisters of the Poor during this long fight. What did you think when you heard the decision today?
I was absolutely delighted. We won on more of a procedural than a substantive point. We actually had states challenging the Trump administration's ability to overturn the Obama-era mandate and to restore religious freedom protection. I mean, they had sort of won under the regulation, and then states sued and said that the federal government was not permitted to allow them to have their religious freedom. So a big part of the question today was about administrative law. Did the Trump administration follow the right administrative procedures for putting out this new exemption for religious and moral objectors? They won the procedural point 7-2, hands down. They also won another really interesting point. The states who challenged them were claiming that federal agencies didn't have the right to apply the religious freedom law, which applies to all federal laws, to this exemption. The court said it didn't absolutely have to get to this question, but while they were thinking about it, the majority said the Religious Freedom Restoration Act governs all federal laws, including this one, and it would have been a bad thing for federal agencies to fail to take it into consideration.
Helen, talk about what this victory means, not just for the Little Sisters of the Poor, but also for religious freedom going forward.
Well, it's a good, clear statement that federal government, federal agencies can give religious freedom protections to citizens and groups. It's a good, clear statement that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has to apply to all federal actions. That's great. So for now, the Little Sisters are in good shape, but there is a cloud on the horizon in the decision, and not surprisingly, Justice Alito talks about it perhaps the most. And Justice Kagan actually suggests a way forward for people who want to challenge this religious freedom right again. There is a rule that agency regulations, like the mandate, like its reversal, that they cannot be, quote, arbitrary and capricious. They have to be reasoned decisions. The court did not actually issue a holding today as to whether these agency exemptions were reasoned and will be fully upheld in the future. And only the Justice Alito concurrence discussed the fact that he thinks that this exemption is good, and that to fail to give an exemption would be a flat-out violation of the Little Sisters' religious freedom. That was the holding I was hoping to get, but we just didn't get to it yet.
Well, we don't have much time left, but I do want to talk about the other decisions today in favor of two Catholic schools in California, ruling that a ministerial exception to government interference applies to teachers in religious schools. Can you explain what that means, Helen, for religious schools when it comes to the hiring and firing of teachers?
Yes. The bottom line question is, does the state get to determine hiring and firing of personnel at Catholic institutions, or do Catholic institutions get to decide? We know our theology of religious institutions say they are communities of mutual witness. Churches have to have the last word about personnel. Today's decision was, for me, an extremely common sense statement that, of course, churches have to decide about their teachers. But what was also wonderful was that it contained language that indicated that personnel beyond teachers may be the kind of employment decisions that religious institutions have to have the last word about above and beyond the state. That our church independence, autonomy requires us to be able to form the communities that constitute religious institutions.
Well, Helen, thank you so much for coming on today. We always appreciate your insight. Thank you again. Helen Alvare, professor of law at the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University.